inside the great chamber of concordance. Prime, the largest space station ever. Built, chaos ruled, representatives from over 200 species pushed and shouted at each other. Some had scales, some had fur, some had bodies made of living crystal or gas contained in special suits. They came from every corner of the galaxy. They were the Galactic Council, the governing body of known civilization, and right now they were terrified. High Chancellor Thanner stood at the center podium. His blue skin had turned pale gray, a sign of extreme stress in his species. He raised all four of his arms, trying to bring order to the room. Please, representatives. Please, we must have order. No one listened. The shouting continued. On the massive display screen behind the Chancellor, red dots moved slowly across the star map. Each dot represented a warship. There were 12,000 red dots, and they were heading straight for the heart of civilized space. The craft Dominion had finally come. For 50 years the craft had been a nightmare at the edge of known space. They were a warrior species, tall and powerful, with gray armor-like skin and forearms that ended in claws. They believed in only one thing: conquest. The strong ruled, the weak served. This was their only law. In 50 years they had conquered 40-star systems. They had enslaved billions. They had destroyed entire civilizations. And now their great armada was coming for the core worlds. Ambassador Trix of the Fennery Collective finally managed to make her voice heard above the chaos. She was small, covered in soft white fur, and her large eyes were wet with fear. The numbers do not lie, she cried. Our combined fleet has 4,000 ships. They have 12,000. We cannot win this battle. We cannot even slow them down. Then we negotiate, shouted another representative, a massive being made of living rock. We offer them tribute. We give them what they want. You fool, hissed Representative Siler of the Vithian Empire, a snake-like creature who wrapped around a tall pole. The Kraref do not negotiate. They do not accept tribute. They accept only total surrender, complete slavery. They will take everything we have and everyone we are. The shouting began again, louder than before. In a small section of the chamber far from the center sat the human delegation. There were only 3 of them. Ambassador Lilina Chen sat in the middle, a woman of 50 years with gray hair and calm dark eyes. On either side of her sat her 2 aides, younger humans who looked nervous. No one paid attention to the humans. No one ever did. Humanity had joined the Galactic Union 847 years ago, when the first alien ship had arrived at Earth. Humans had been excited. They thought they would join a great civilization of advanced beings. They thought they would learn amazing technologies and explore the stars. Instead, they found that the galaxy already had plenty of advanced species. The galaxy already had warriors and scientists and builders. What the galaxy needed, they were told, was food. Earth had rich soil and perfect conditions for farming, and so humanity became farmers. For 847 years, humans had been known as a minor agricultural species. They grew food, they made art, they wrote poetry and philosophy. They were considered peaceful, simple, and not very important. During major debates, nobody asked for the human opinion. During crises, nobody expected humans to help. This was exactly how humanity wanted it. Lilina Chen watched the chaos around her with a still face. Her aides looked at her with Questions in their eyes, but she gave them a small shake of her head. Not yet. The chamber fell suddenly quiet when the main screen flickered. A new image appeared, a face, gray skin, 4 arms, eyes like black holes that held no mercy. It was Admiral Voreth, commander of the Krath Armada. Greetings, Galactic Council, the Admiral said. His voice was deep and cold, like stones grinding together. I am Voreth. I speak for the Dominion. High Chancellor Bethnar tried to compose himself. Admiral Voreth, surely we can discuss this situation. Surely there is a way to find peace between our peoples. Admiral Voreth laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Peace? You misunderstand, Chancellor. We do not come to discuss. We come to inform. In 72 hours my Armada reach your core systems. You have 2 choices. 1. Surrender completely. Every species, every world, every resource will belong to the Dominion. You will serve us. 2. Refuse and be destroyed. Every ship, every station, every city. We will leave nothing but ashes. This is madness, shouted Ambassador Trix. We are hundreds of species, billions of lives. Yes, Admiral Voreth agreed. You are, and soon you will all be ours, or you will be nothing at all. He paused, and his lipless mouth curved into something like a smile. You have until we arrive to decide. Choose wisely. The screen went dark for a moment. There was complete silence. Then the chaos returned, worse than before. Some representatives were crying, some were screaming, some were already trying to contact their home worlds, preparing for evacuation or surrender. In the small human section, Alina Chen stood up. Quietly she turned to her aides. I need to contact Earth, she said in a low voice. Stay here, observe, report anything unusual. Ambassador, one of her aides whispered. What are we going to do? We have no military, we have no weapons, we're just farmers. Elelina looked at the young man for a long moment. There was something in her eyes, something old, something that had been passed down through human generations for almost 1,000 years, a secret. Just observe, she said, and do not worry. She left the chamber through a side door. No one noticed. No one ever noticed the humans. The next several hours were filled with arguments and despair. Plans were made and abandoned. Some species talked about gathering their fleets for one final stand. Others talked about immediate surrender. The Fenari representative suggested sending everything they had at the Krath while their civilians tried to flee. The Vithian representative calculated that even with such a sacrifice, only 12% of the population could escape. There was no hope. Everyone knew it. Mathematics were simple and brutal. 12,000 warships against 4,000. The craft would destroy the Galactic Union's fleet in hours. Then they would take everything. Late in the evening, as exhaustion began to silence even the most passionate voices, something strange happened. A technician at one of the sensor stations suddenly sat up straight. Her gray skin went even grayer. She pressed buttons, checked readings, pressed more buttons. Hi, Chancellor, she called out, her voice shaking. Hi, Chancellor, we have something. Vithaner turned to her. What is it? More craft ships? No, sir, it's I don't know what it is. The main screen changed. It now showed the space behind the craft Armada, far behind in a region of empty space where nothing should exist. There was an energy signature there, a big one, a very, very big one. That's impossible, whispered Representative Siler, there's nothing. Out there, no systems, no stations. Nothing, the readings must be wrong. Said the Fenari ambassador, our sensors must be damaged, but the readings were not wrong. As the council watched, the energy signature grew larger. Something was coming out of that empty space. Something was emerging from nothing. What is that? The chancellor asked. No one answered. No one knew. Ambassador Elena Chen returned to the chamber. At that moment, she walked to her seat, sat down, and folded her hands in her lap. Her face showed nothing. Her aides looked at her with wide eyes, but she did not explain. On the screen, the energy signature continued to grow. It was now larger than anything the council had ever seen, larger than a star, larger than a fleet, larger than anything that should exist in normal space. Something's coming through, the technician reported, her voice barely a whisper. Multiple contacts, hundreds, no thousands, thousands of contacts. The council chamber was completely silent now. Every eye, every sensor, every thought was focused on that impossible reading. In that empty space, where nothing should be, ships were appearing, not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands of ships, they came through in perfect formation, emerging from a hole. In reality itself, their hulls were black. Their shapes were unlike anything. In the database, they carried no transponder signals, they sent no identification codes. How many? The chancellor asked. The technician checked her readings 3 times before answering. Her voice was hollow with shock. 15,000 ships, High Chancellor. 15,000 unknown vessels. They're not in any database. They don't match any known species. They don't exist in any record anywhere. The chamber erupted again, but this time the shouting was different. This was the sound of beings who had just seen something impossible. The Krath Armada was terrifying, but at least they were known. This new fleet was something else entirely. This was fear of the unknown. Who were these beings? Where did they come from? Were they here to help? Were they here to conquer? Were they something even worse than the craft? In her small seat at the edge of the chamber, Ambassador Elena Chen watched the chaos. She did not shout, she did not panic, she simply watched and waited, and knew what no one else in that room knew. The wait was almost over. Humanity's 800-year secret was about to be revealed. Admiral Vorath stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Wrath, and stared at the sensor readings with awe. 4 of his eyes, his officers, moved nervously around him. None of them wanted to be the one to speak first. Sensor error, Vorath finally said. That is the only explanation we have. Check the sensors 17 times, Admiral. His science officer replied, keeping his voice very careful. The readings are accurate. There are ships behind us. 15,000 of them. Vorath turned slowly. His massive gray body seemed to fill the entire bridge, his eyes black and empty, fixed on the science officer. Ships do not appear from nothing. Ships do not exist without records. Ships do not hide in empty space for no reason. He stepped closer. Find me the truth or I will find. A new science officer, Admiral, another officer called out. The unknown fleet is holding position. They are not advancing. They are not retreating. They are simply waiting. Vor turned back to the main screen. The black shapes of the unknown ships sat there in perfect formation. 15,000 vessels, each one silent, each one still. It was not natural. Fleets moved. Fleets communicated, fleets showed signs of life. This fleet did nothing, it just waited. It was Vor had to admit to himself deeply unsettling. Open a channel, he ordered, let us see who these ghosts are. The communication was sent. For long minutes there was no response. The ghost fleet remained silent. They do not answer, Boris said. Either they cannot or they choose not to. Either way they are nothing. Distraction. We continue to the core worlds. These ghosts will follow or they will not. It does not matter, Admiral, his first officer said carefully. Should we not investigate? We do not know what weapons they carry. We do not know their intentions. To turn our backs on an unknown force of this size is exactly what we will do, Boris interrupted. I have conquered 40-star systems. I have destroyed fleets 10 times the size of these ghosts. Unknown does not mean dangerous. It means unknown, and I do not fear the unknown. He returned to his command chair. Set course for the core worlds. Maximum speed. If these ghosts want to stop us, let them try. The craft Armada began to move again, back on Concordance Prime. The Galactic Council watched these events with growing confusion and terror. The ghost fleet had appeared from nowhere. The craft were ignoring them, and no one had any idea what would happen next. High Chancellor V. Thanner had ordered every archive searched, every database checked, every historical record examined. The result was always the same: nothing. These ships did not exist. They had never existed. There was no record of their design, their technology, their origin. They were impossible. Perhaps they are a precursor race, suggested Representative Seiler, coiling tighter around his pole. Builders, maybe the ones who created the jump gates before disappearing millions of years ago. The builders are gone, said Ambassador Trix, her white fur standing on end with fear. If they return now after all this time, what would it mean? What would they want? Maybe they want to help us, said the Rock, being representative hopefully. Or maybe they want to destroy us all. Seiler hissed, the enemy of our enemy is not always our friend. These ghost ships could be worse than the craft, much worse. The chamber erupted in arguments. Again, fear made everyone speak louder and think less clearly. Hope and terror mixed together until no one could tell them apart. In the human section, Ambassador Alina Chen's aides kept looking at her, waiting for some explanation. She gave them none. She simply watched the screen, her face calm, her hands folded. Finally, one of her aides could not take it anymore. He leaned close and whispered, Ambassador, you know something. I can see it. Please tell us what is happening. Elelina turned to him, her dark eyes held something ancient, something sad and proud at the same time. Watch, she said, and remember everything. You see, someday you will tell this story to your children and grandchildren. They need to know how this day happened. They need to understand why. Before the aide could ask more questions, something changed on the main screen. The ghost fleet was moving. They're advancing, the technician reported, her voice high with panic. The unknown ships are advancing toward the craft Armada, speed increasing. They're moving fast, very fast. The chamber fell silent. Every being watched as the wall of black ships began to close. The distance between themselves and the craft, the ghost fleet, moved in perfect formation. Not one ship was out of place. Not one ship moved differently from the others. It was like watching a Single organism made of 15,000 parts. On the craft flagship Admiral Voreth. Watch the same thing with growing interest. Should finally a reaction. Finally something to measure. They move. Well, he admitted, whoever they are. They have discipline, but discipline alone does not win battles. Size of weapons wins battles. Strength of armor wins battles. Let us see what these ghosts are truly made of. He leaned forward in his chair. If they want to fight, we will give them one. All ships turn and face the enemy. Prepare for battle. Today we add ghost ships to our list of conquests. 12,000 craft warships turned as one, their weapons powered up, their shields activated. They had conquered 40 star systems. They had never lost a battle. They would not lose one today. The ghost fleet continued to advance, and then a signal came through. A transmission broadcast on all frequencies in every language known to the galaxy. A human voice spoke. Krath. Dominion vessels, you are targeting protected worlds. You have one chance to withdraw. There will be no second warning. The transmission ended. Silence followed. On Concordance Prime, the council chamber was frozen in shock. Human voice. The message had been spoken in a human language first, then translated, but humans had no fleet. Humans had no weapons. Humans were farmers. Every eye in the chamber turned to the small human section. Ambassador Alina Chen stood up slowly. She did not speak. She did not explain. She simply stood there, her calm face unchanged, as if she had been expecting this moment for a very long time. Ambassador Chen, the High Chancellor said, his voice shaking, what is the meaning of this? What do you know about these ships? Alelina looked at him, then she looked around the chamber at all the faces staring at her, alien faces from hundreds of different worlds, faces that had ignored humanity for 800 years, faces that had considered humans unimportant, weak, simple. I know, she said quietly, that the craft should have listened to the warning before anyone could respond. The main screen flashed with light. The battle had begun. On the craft flagship Admiral Vor watched his sensors with confusion. The ghost ships had fired their weapons, but his sensors showed nothing. No energy beams, no missiles, no projectiles of any kind, just nothing. Then his ship started dying. The first craft vessel exploded without warning. One moment it was there, shields at full power, weapons ready. The next moment it was a ball of fire and fragments. The explosion made no sense. Nothing had hit it, nothing had touched it. Then another ship exploded, and another, and another. What is happening? Voreth screamed. Where are the weapons? What is hitting us? We don't know, his science officer shouted back, fear breaking his voice. There's nothing on sensors, no energy, no mass, nothing, but our ships are dying. Shields are not stopping it. Armor is not stopping it. Nothing is stopping it. The explosions continued. Ship after ship after ship. The craft Armada, the most powerful force in the known galaxy, was being destroyed by weapons that did not seem to exist. Voreth watched his empire crumble on the screen. 12,000 ships. He had brought 12,000 ships, ships that had conquered 40 star systems, ships that had never known defeat. Now they were dying one by one, and he could not even see what was killing them. Return fire, he screamed. All ships return fire. Target the ghost fleet. His remaining ships obeyed. Thousands of weapons fired at once, energy beams, missiles, torpedoes, everything the craft had. Everything they had used to conquer the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet did not slow down. The Ghost Fleet did not stop. Weapons hit them. Voreth could see the impacts, but nothing happened. The black holes did not crack. The formations did not break. The ships did not even shake. It was impossible. It was a nightmare. It was the end of the craft dominion. On Concordance Prime, the Council watched in complete silence. The battle, if it could even be called a battle, lasted 11 minutes. In 11 minutes, the greatest armada the galaxy had ever seen was reduced to fragments and memories. When it was over, only 347 craft ships remained. These were the ones that had surrendered immediately, the ones that had shut down their weapons and begged for mercy. The Ghost Fleet let them live. 15,000 black ships floated among the wreckage of the craft armada. They had not lost a single vessel. They had not even slowed down, and now slowly they were turning toward the core worlds, toward Concordance Prime, toward the Council. The chamber erupted in panic once again. But this time the panic had a different flavor. This was not fear of the craft. This was fear of something much, much greater. Ambassador Alina Chen stood in the middle of the chaos, untouched by it, unmoved by it. She raised her hand. "High Chancellor," she said. Her voice was not loud, but somehow it cut through all the noise. "I request permission to address the Council." VTHNR looked at her. His blue face was almost white now. His forearms hung at his side, useless. "Ambassador Chen," he said, "I think you have much to explain." Elelina nodded slowly. "Yes," she agreed, "I do, and I will, but first I need everyone to understand one thing." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species after species, being after being. "No one is going to hurt you. No one is going to conquer you. No one is going to enslave you. What you just witnessed was not an invasion. It was not the beginning of a new war." She paused. "It was protection. It was the thing humanity has been preparing to do for 847 years. And now I will tell you the truth about my species, the truth we have hidden for almost a millennium, the truth about why we chose to be farmers when we could have been so much more." The Ghost Fleet continued to approach, silent, patient, waiting, and the galaxy waited with it, about to learn the greatest secret it had never known. The silence in the council chamber was heavy. It pressed down on every being present, making it hard to breathe, hard to think. On the main screen, the Ghost Fleet had stopped moving. 15,000 black ships hung in space like a wall of night, waiting. They were less than 1 hour from Concordance Prime. Ambassador Alina Chen walked slowly from the human section to the center podium. Every eye followed her, every sensor tracked her movement. For 800 years, humans had been invisible. Now suddenly, they were the only thing anyone could see. Elelina reached the podium and turned to face the council. Her face was calm, but there was something in her eyes, something old, something heavy. 847 years ago she began. A Fenari exploration ship discovered Earth. Humanity was young then. We had only just begun to explore our own solar system. We had great dreams about the galaxy. We imagined finding wise aliens who would share knowledge with us. We imagined becoming part of something greater. She paused. Instead, we found the truth. The galaxy was not a place of wisdom and sharing. It was a place of empires and conquest. The strong took from the weak, The weak served or died. There was no law but power. There was no justice but strength. Representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. What Alina said was not polite, but it was not untrue. When we joined the Galactic Union, we were given a choice. We could build fleets and try to compete with species that had been traveling the stars for millions of years, or we could find another way. Elelina's hands gripped the podium. We chose another way. You chose to be farmers, High Chancellor. VTHNR said. There was bitterness in his voice. You chose to be nothing. No. Alina said quietly. We chose to appear to be nothing. There is a difference. She touched a control on the podium. The main screen changed. Now it showed Earth, blue and green and white floating in space, beautiful on the surface. We became exactly what the galaxy expected. Farmers, artists, philosophers. We grew food. We wrote poetry. We discussed ideas. We were peaceful. We were harmless. We were forgettable. The screen changed again. Now it showed something else, a place of darkness. Between galaxies, a place where nothing should exist, but below the surface, in the deep places, in the spaces between dimensions that other species had not yet discovered, we did something else. We prepared. The image expanded. In that dark space, structures became visible. Massive structures, shipyards that stretched across light years, factories that built weapons of impossible design, training facilities where humans lived their entire lives learning the arts of war. For 847 years, we built. Alina continued. We researched physics that the galaxy considered impossible. We developed weapons that work on principles your scientists have not discovered. We constructed ships in dimensions your sensors cannot detect. And we trained crews generation after generation, families who lived and died in the void, never seeing Earth, never knowing any other life, all waiting, all preparing for the day when they might be needed. The chamber was completely silent. Not one being moved, not one being spoke. We call it Terra Obscura. Alina said. The dark Earth, 15,000 vessels, technology 500 years beyond anything in the known galaxy, and crews who have spent their entire existence training for one purpose: to protect, to conquer. Hissed Representative Siler. You mean to conquer? Elelina turned to face the snake-like being. Her expression did not change. If we wanted to conquer, Representative, we would have done it centuries ago. We could have taken this galaxy at any point in the last 500 years. We chose not to. Do you understand? We chose not to. But why? Ambassador Trix asked, her voice small and confused. Why hide such power? Why pretend to be weak when you were so strong? Elelina was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, because humanity learned a lesson long ago, a terrible lesson. Before we ever met other species, we spent thousands of years doing to each other what the craft do to the galaxy. We fought wars, we committed genocides, we enslaved and tortured and destroyed. We were as evil as any species that has ever existed. She paused, letting the words sink in, and then we saw what we had become. We looked at ourselves and felt shame, deep shame. We nearly destroyed ourselves before we found a better way. We learned that power without wisdom is destruction, strength without mercy is cruelty. The ability to harm means nothing if you cannot choose not to harm. Alina looked around the chamber again. When we joined The galaxy, we saw the same patterns. Repeating, the strong taking from the weak, the powerful destroying the helpless, and we knew that if we revealed our strength, we would become part of that pattern. Others would fear us. Fear creates enemies. Enemies create war. War creates suffering. We did not want to be another empire. We did not want to be another craft. So you hid. The Chancellor said, so we hid. Alina agreed. We became farmers. We became invisible. We let other species feel powerful. We let other species think they were in control, and every single day for 847 years, we chose not to use the power we had built. Every single day, we chose peace. She turned back to the main screen. The ghost fleet still waited there, silent and still, but we also made a promise to ourselves, a promise to every human who has ever lived. Never again would we stand by while innocents were destroyed. Never again would we watch genocide and do nothing. If the day ever came when evil threatened to consume everything, we would act, we would protect. Elelina's voice grew harder now. The Craft came to conquer this galaxy. They came to enslave billions. They came to destroy civilizations. They came to do exactly what humanity once did to itself. And that, representatives, is the one thing we will never allow. Not ever, not while humanity exists. The chamber remained silent. Elelina continued, we did not want to reveal ourselves. We hoped we would never have to. For 800 years, we hoped the galaxy would learn to protect itself. We hoped peace would grow stronger than war. We hoped beings would choose cooperation over conquest. She shook her head slowly, but hope is not enough. The craft proved that. 12,000 warships, 40 conquered systems, billions of slaves. That is what happens when no one is strong enough to say no. That is what happens when evil is allowed to grow unchallenged. On the screen, the wreckage of the Krath Armada floated in the void. Thousands of destroyed ships. The greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen, reduced to nothing in 11 minutes. Now you know what happened. Alina said, you know what the ghost fleet is. You know where it came from. You know who we are. She stepped back from the podium. The question now is, what happens next? The silence stretched on. Finally, High Chancellor Bethnar spoke. What do you want from us, Ambassador Chen? What does humanity demand? Elelina looked at him for a long moment, then slowly she smiled. It was a sad smile, a tired smile. Nothing, she said. Bethnar blinked all four of his eyes. Nothing. Nothing. We do not want your worlds. We do not want your resources. We do not want your obedience or your worship or your fear. We want nothing from you at all. Then why? Trix asked. Why build such a fleet? Why hide for so long? Why save us? What is the point if you want nothing in return? Elelina was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was very soft, because it was right. Because innocent beings were going to die and we could stop it, so we did. Because that is what humanity decided to be 800 years ago. Not conquerors, not rulers, protectors. We protect because protection is good. We save because saving is good. We need no other reason. We need no reward. She looked around the chamber one last time. The Terra Obscura fleet will return to the void. We will continue to watch. We will continue to wait. Humanity will go back to being farmers and artists and philosophers. Nothing will change. You will probably Forget us again in a few generations. That is fine, that is what we want. Elelina's voice grew firm, but remember this, there are protectors in the darkness, if any species tries to do what the Krath tried to do, if any empire rises to enslave and destroy. They will face the same fate, not because we want power, not because we want control, but because some things are wrong and some wrongs must be stopped. She turned and began walking back to her seat. That is the truth of humanity. That is what we have been hiding for 847 years now. You know, behind her the ghost fleet waited in the void, silent, patient, ready, and for the first time in its history, the Galactic Council had nothing to say. The chamber remained frozen for nearly 5 minutes after Elena Chen returned to her seat. 200 species, some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, sat in complete silence. They did not know what to say. They did not know what to think. Finally, Representative Siler uncoiled himself from his pole and moved toward the center of the room. His scales caught the light as he turned to face the human section. You deceived us, he hissed. The anger in his voice was clear. For 800 years you lied. You pretended to be weak. You pretended to be harmless. You watched us struggle and fight and die. And you did nothing. You had the power to stop wars. You had the power to save millions, and you chose to hide. Elelina looked at him calmly. Yes, do you not feel shame? Siler demanded. Do you not feel guilt for all the lives you could have saved? Elelina was quiet. For a moment, when she spoke, her voice was heavy with something old and painful. Every single day, she said. Every single day for 847 years, humanity has felt that weight. We watched conflicts that we could have ended. We saw suffering that we could have stopped. And we did nothing. She stood up slowly. Do you know how hard that was? Do you have any idea what it costs to have power and choose not to use it, to watch beings die and know that you could save them, but also know that saving them would start something worse? She walked forward again, not to the podium this time, but to stand in the middle of the chamber surrounded by alien faces. We made a calculation, a terrible, heartless calculation. If we revealed our power, other species would fear us. That fear would grow into resentment. Resentment would grow into alliance against us, and eventually war would come, a war far greater than any the galaxy had ever seen, a war that would kill not millions but trillions. She looked directly at Siler. So we hid. We watched small wars happen so that the great war would not. We let thousands die so that billions could live. We chose the smaller evil to prevent the larger one. That is a convenient excuse, Siler said coldly. It is not an excuse, Elena replied. It is a confession. We know what we did. We know the cost of our choice. Every human alive carries that burden. It is the price of being a protector. You cannot save everyone. You can only try to save the most. Ambassador Trix stood up, her small body trembling. But why reveal yourselves now if your strategy was to remain hidden? Why show us the truth? Elena turned to her. Because the Krath were different. The Krath were not a small war. They were not a regional conflict. They were coming to conquer everything. Every species, every world, every being in the galaxy would have been enslaved or killed. That was not a small evil we could ignore. That was the great war we had been trying to prevent. She spread her hands. We had no choice. Either we revealed ourselves, or we let the galaxy fall, and whatever our sins, whatever our secrets, we could not allow that. Humanity may be willing to watch small evils happen, but we will never stand by for total darkness. High Chancellor VTHNR leaned forward in his chair. Ambassador Chen, I must ask a direct question. I must know the truth. Ask. Alina said, you say you want nothing from us. You say you will return to being farmers, but how can we believe you? You have been lying for 800 years. Why should we trust anything you say? Now Alina nodded. It was a fair question. You should not trust us, she said. Not with words anyway. Words are easy. Anyone can speak words. The craft made promises too, before they conquered their first world. Words mean nothing. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button. The main screen changed. Let me show you what trust looks like. The screen now showed a world, a beautiful world with blue oceans and green forests. It hung in space, peaceful and alive. This is the planet the humans call New Haven, Alina said. It is one of 12 colony worlds we established in the void, far from any star maps. It has been inhabited for 300 years. 7 billion humans live there. She pressed another button. The view changed to show space around the planet. There were no defenses visible, no weapons platforms, no defensive satellites. Nothing. New Haven has no military protection, Alina continued. It has no weapons. It has no shields. If any species wished to attack it, they could destroy it easily. Murmurs spread through the chamber. This is the proof, Alina said. We have shown you where our people live. We have shown you that they are defenseless. If we were planning to conquer you, would we give you such a weakness to exploit? If we were your enemy, would we hand you a hostage? She turned off the device. Humanity's strength is not in our fleet alone. Our strength is in our willingness to be vulnerable. We trust you not to attack New Haven. We trust you not to hurt our people, and in return we ask you to trust us not to hurt yours. The chamber was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet, not shock, not fear, something else, something like understanding. You could have kept that secret, Bethaner said slowly. You could have shown us your power without showing us your weakness. Why did you tell us about New Haven? Elelina smiled slightly. Because trust is a gift, Chancellor. It must be given freely to be worth anything. We are giving you our trust. What you do with it will tell us what kind of galaxy this truly is. A long silence followed. Then surprisingly it was the massive rock being who spoke. His voice rumbled like an earthquake. I have lived for 3,000 years, he said. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have seen species come and go. I have seen much evil and little good. He paused. I have never seen a species reveal its weakness to those it could destroy. I have never seen such trust given so freely. I do not fully understand humanity. Perhaps I never will, but I believe you, Ambassador Chen. I believe you are what you say you are. One by one, other representatives began to speak. Some were angry still, some were frightened, but many slowly began to express something else. Respect, wonder, even gratitude. What about the craft survivors? Someone asked. The ships that surrendered, what will happen to them? Elelina nodded. A good question. We will not destroy them. We will not enslave them. We will not even punish them. This caused new confusion. They came to destroy us, Siler said. They came to conquer and kill, and you will. Just let them go. No, Alina said, we will not let them go. We will help them, she signaled, and the screen changed again. It now showed another planet. This one was rougher than new. Haven with rocky terrain and harsh landscapes, but it was livable. This world has been prepared for the craft. Survivors, Alina explained. It has shelters, food, water, and everything they need to survive. We will take them there. We will give them tools and resources. We will give them a chance to build a new society. But why? Trix asked, genuinely confused. They are your enemies. They would have destroyed you. Elelina looked at her for a long moment. Representative Trix, do you know why humanity once nearly destroyed itself? Trix shook her head. Because we believe that enemies were problems to be eliminated. We believe that the only way to stop evil was to destroy those who committed it, kill the enemy, and the war end. Simple, clean, final. Alina's voice grew quieter, but it never worked. Every enemy we destroyed created more enemies, sons who wanted revenge for their fathers, daughters who wanted justice for their mothers, nations who remembered ancient wrongs. The killing never stopped because the hatred never stopped. Violence created more violence. Death created more death. It was an endless cycle. She looked around the chamber. When humanity finally stopped that cycle, it was not because we became stronger. It was because we became wiser. We learned that enemies are not problems to be eliminated. They are beings to be transformed. You do not destroy evil by destroying the evil person. You destroy evil by showing the evil person that there is a better way. She gestured at the screen. The craft were taught that conquest was the only path. Their entire culture was built on the idea that the strong must rule and the weak must serve. That is evil, yes. But it is learned evil, and what is learned can be unlearned. Elelina's voice was firm. We will give the craft survivors a chance to build something different, a chance to become something other than what they were. Maybe they will waste that chance. Maybe they will cling to their old ways and try to rebuild their empire. If so, we will stop them again. But maybe, just maybe, some of them will see another path. Maybe some of them will become something better. She smiled slightly. That hope, representatives, is worth more than their destruction could ever be. That hope is why humanity chooses mercy, even when vengeance would be easier. The chamber was quiet, but it was a thoughtful quiet now. Contemplative quiet. High Chancellor V. Thanner stood up slowly. Ambassador Chen, he said, I have served on this council for 70 years. I have seen many things, but I have never seen anything like today. I have never met a species like humanity. He made a formal gesture of respect. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you for saving us, for trusting us, for showing us that there is more to power than destruction. Ellen bowed her head slightly. We do not need thanks, Chancellor. We did what was right. That is enough. But as she returned to her seat, she felt the weight of 800 years pressing down on her shoulders. The secret was out. The truth was known. Humanity could never go back to being invisible. The future was uncertain, but it was a future that humanity had chosen, a future of openness instead of hiding, a future of trust instead of fear. For better or worse, everything had changed. 3 days had passed since the battle. 3 days since the Ghost Fleet had appeared from nowhere and destroyed the Greatest Armada in Galactic history. 3 days since the truth about humanity had been revealed to a stunned galaxy. News had spread to every corner of known space. Billions of beings watched recordings of the battle over and over. Trillions more listened to Alina Chen's words translated into every language. For the first time in history, everyone knew about the farmers who were secretly warriors, the simple species who had been hiding impossible power. Reactions were mixed. Some species celebrated. They called humans heroes and saviors. They sent messages of gratitude to Earth and to Concordance Prime. On a dozen worlds, humans who had lived quietly among other species suddenly found themselves treated like honored guests. Other species reacted with fear. If humans had hidden such power for so long, what else were they hiding? Could they be trusted? Should alliances be formed against them before it was too late? Panic spread on some worlds even though humans had done nothing threatening, and some species simply felt ashamed. For 800 years they had looked down on humanity. They had treated humans as simple creatures useful for growing food but nothing more. Now they understood how wrong they had been. The shame was hard to carry. On Concordance Prime, the council was still in session. They had been debating for 3 days straight, barely pausing to rest. What did humanity's revelation mean for the future? What policies should be made? What should change? Ambassador Alina Chen sat in her usual place, watching the debates with tired eyes. She had answered hundreds of questions in those 3 days, the same questions over and over. Why did you hide? How powerful are you really? What do you want from us? She had given the same answers each time. Sometimes beings believed her, sometimes they did not, but the debates were not her concern anymore. Others would decide how the galaxy reacted to humanity's secret. Alina's job was finished. She had revealed the truth. Now she just wanted to rest. A soft signal came to her personal communicator. She looked at it and stood up quietly. "Excuse me," she murmured to her aides. "I need to attend to something." She left the chamber and walked through the corridors of Concordance Prime until she reached a private observation deck. The room was empty except for one person, a human woman in a black uniform, standing at the window looking out at the stars. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, commander of the Terra Obscura fleet. Alina walked to stand beside her. For a long moment neither spoke. They just looked at the stars together. "How are your crews?" Alina finally asked. Sarah was quiet for a moment, tired, relieved. "Some of them are crying. They spent their whole lives training for a battle that might never come. Now it has come and gone, and they are not sure what to feel." She turned to look at Alina. "Some of them are asking to go home to see Earth. Many of them have never been there. Their grandparents were born in the void. They have only heard stories about blue skies and green forests and oceans." Alina nodded. "They can go if they want. They have earned that right, but most of them will not go," Sarah said quietly. "Most of them will return to the void, back to their post, back to waiting." "Why?" Sarah smiled, but it was a sad smile. "Because the job is not done. The craft are defeated, but there will be others. There are always others. Someone somewhere will decide that conquest is easier than cooperation. Someone will build an army and try to take what does not belong to them. When that happens, we need to be ready." She looked back at the stars. "That is the burden of being a protector ambassador. The work is never finished. The watch never ends. You cannot save the galaxy once and then rest. You must save it again and again forever. Elena was quiet. She understood. She had carried the same burden for 30 years as ambassador, the weight of knowing, the weight of pretending, the weight of secrets. I spoke to the council about the craft survivors. Elena said they have agreed to let us handle their rehabilitation. No other species wants that responsibility. Sarah nodded. We have already transported them to the new world. Most of them are still confused. Some are angry. A few have tried to attack our personnel. Any casualties? None. Our people are trained for this. They know how to be patient. They know how to wait. Sarah paused. There is one Krath who has been asking to speak with a human leader. Admiral Voreth. He survived the battle. He wants to understand. Elena raised an eyebrow. Understand what? Everything. I think why we saved his people, why we did not destroy them when we had the chance, why we are helping those who came to enslave us. Sarah shrugged. He is struggling. His entire understanding of reality has been broken. He does not know how to process it. Elena thought about this. I would like to speak with him someday. When things settle down, I will arrange it. They stood in silence. Again, outside the window, one of the ghost ships was visible, a black shape against the stars, waiting to return to the void, waiting to resume its eternal patrol. Do you think it was worth it? Elena asked quietly. 800 years of hiding, 800 years of watching and waiting. Was it worth it in the end? Sarah considered the question for a long time. I do not know, she finally admitted. I know what we prevented. Galaxy is still free. Billions of beings are still alive who would have been enslaved. That matters. That has to matter. She paused. But I also know what we lost. Generations of humans who never saw sunlight. Families who lived and died in the void, never knowing anything but duty. Children who were trained for war before they could walk. We gave up so much to become protectors. Sometimes I wonder if we gave up too much. Elena had no answer for that. There was no answer. It was one of those questions that could never be fully resolved. The galaxy knows about us now. Elena said, things will change. Some species will hate us. Some will fear us. Some will try to use us. Nothing will ever be the same. No, Sarah agreed. It will not. She turned to face Elena fully, but that is not necessarily bad. Perhaps the galaxy needed to know. Perhaps it is time for humanity to step out of the shadows and be part of things. Openly, we have been hiding for so long. Maybe it is time to stop. Elena smiled slightly. That is a very optimistic view for the commander of a secret fleet. Sarah returned the smile. Someone has to be optimistic. If the protectors lose hope, what chance does anyone else have? Behind them the door opened. One of Elena's aides entered looking apologetic. Ambassador, I am sorry to interrupt. The council is requesting your presence. They want to discuss the terms of humanity's new relationship with the Union. Elena sighed. More debates, more questions, more explanations. The work of diplomacy never ended, just like the work of protection. I will be there shortly, she said. Aide nodded and left. Elena turned back to Admiral Okonkwo. I suppose this is goodbye for now. Sarah extended her hand, and Elena shook it. Take care of the galaxy, ambassador. We will be watching. From the void as always, and you take care of yourselves, Elena replied. You are not just protectors, you are a people too, do not forget that, Sarah smiled. We will try. They parted. Elena returned to the council chamber to face more questions and more fears. Sarah returned to her ship to rejoin the that had protected the galaxy in secret for 800 years. Hours later, the Terracura fleet began to move, one by one. The black ships activated their dimensional drives. One by one they slipped out of normal space, returning to the void between dimensions where no sensors could follow. In the council chamber, representatives watched them go. On the main screen, some felt relief, some felt fear, some felt sadness. Elena Chen watched with the heaviest heart of all. She knew what those ships represented. She knew the sacrifice of every human who served on them. She knew the weight they carried, the burden of protection that never ended. The last ship vanished. The screen showed nothing but empty space where impossible things had happened. Ambassador Chen, the High Chancellor, said quietly, "Will they return?" Elena looked at him. "Only if they are needed," she said. "Only if something threatens the galaxy again. Otherwise they will wait. They will watch. They will protect from the shadows as they have always done." She turned back to the screen. "That is the nature of true strength, Chancellor. It is not about what you can destroy. It is about what you choose to protect, and humanity will always choose to protect. That is who we are. That is who we have always been." Far away in the void between galaxies, 15,000 ships resumed their eternal patrol. Their crews returned to their routines, training, watching, waiting. They did not know when they would be needed again. Perhaps never, perhaps tomorrow. It did not matter. They would be ready. They would always be ready. That was the burden of being humanity's protectors, and it was a burden they carried with pride. On a quiet observation deck, a young human crew member looked out at the endless darkness. He had never seen Earth. He had never felt wind or rain or sunlight. He had been born in the void like his parents and grandparents before him, but he knew why he was here. He knew what he protected, and he knew that somewhere in the galaxy he would never see, billions of beings were living free because of his sacrifice. That was enough. It had to be enough. He smiled softly and returned to his duties. The watch continued. The protectors endured, and the galaxy for now was